locked in a house it was actually by a woman. It was
shockingly regressive, isn't it?
Yeah. Women outperform the men.
Oh, you're a woman, but you're kind of behaving like this. This is very unusual.
Girl power.
Welcome to our podcast. It's Elle Osborne here from EO Estate Agents. Wanted to highlight a topic which I think is quite a big topic in property at the moment in general. We're in a very male-dominated industry, so we want to talk about women in business and especially women in property. To start off, this is Katherine and Emma. Today we're going to obviously discuss women in business, we just mentioned. So if you both don't mind me asking, what do you find the hardest thing as a woman in business or in property?
I think, for me personally, one of the finest lines I struggle to walk is that narrow trajectory between being nice and being kind of how society has made us like be nice girls. It's always very good to be sort of acquiescent and to be lovely and to be amenable and biddable. And actually, as a business owner and as we essentially run our own companies within underneath the EO umbrella. You have to be a bit more hard-headed than perhaps you would otherwise be. It can be a little bit more challenging that you can't be this nice girl. You have to go out. You have to be a little bit more hard-headed because you're going into bat for your own self. You haven't got a salary coming in. You haven't got some people in the office kind of backing you up. We are all working together really, really nicely, and like we always pass stuff between us, and it's like a really comfortable, nice. Kind of community to work in, but you're not kind of you go into bat for yourself.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah, I think I've found that in previous roles that I've had, it's always been a male dominated hierarchy, so it's always been a kind of middle-aged man at the top of the kind of pecking order, and then down and down and down, then you're kind of somewhere down near the bottom. And then obviously going out on your own as a self-employed business owner, you're trying to kind of, like you say, pave your way, and you want to be a face that's remembered, recognised in amongst the men of the industry. I mean, for myself and Elle, we're quite heavily involved in new homes and construction, which is a very male-dominated sector of the property industry. Especially when you're going onto building sites, it's all men. You do feel a little bit like you're kind of getting overlooked, or you get judged. Because you maybe turn up in a suit and heels or whatever to a business meeting on a building site, but that's part of our role and whatever. And you just want to be kind of taken seriously and not kind of spoken, like people look through you basically. If you go and have a kind of site meeting with a site manager who's a man, trying to make it, your kind of self come across seriously and not be taken just from face value, but you want to be heard. I think that's the biggest challenge, is just to be able to kind of prove to yourself that you know what you're talking about. You can kind of get in amongst them, you know your stuff. It doesn't matter about gender. It doesn't matter if you were once a bricklayer or not. As long as you know kind of what you're doing, then you can be you have every right to be there as much as any other man.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
I mean, they're really both really great answers. I think Katherine touched on what you said with the face value thing and about being a girly girl, and I think there's a very much in this industry especially, and then what you've said there is people looking through you for face value. Or I found it extremely hard when I first started business to be probably too nicey nice, and what's if you're not nice as a female, then you might come across as as a bitch, if I'm okay to say that on really a podcast, or being really hard nosed or hard faced, which is wrong. Essentially it's difficult, and I think
we're not allowed to be assertive.
And you have to be assertive, and I think it's the other side of it is that I often find that you're spoken down to quite a lot, even if you're the stronger agent in the process. I remember we went down to a site, with a joint agency, and he said to us, "Oh, do you know how to do this? Who do you work for? Are you like a neg, or are you like Saturday staff?" And we generally meant it, and you think,
so have you ever been? Have you ever done off-plan sales before? Have you ever been to a site at this stage of construction?
Oh mate, you've got no idea.
And then we outsold them 4-1, so on a development of 5, and we were like, we know what we're doing. Thanks. I think we've proven that now. Thank you.
It's hard, isn't it? I think it's hard to get the balance. I think what I found really interesting, I'm in a group on Facebook which is primarily women in business in our sector, and they had a picture of a property group which is very male heavy. You know, it was basically 9 men and 1 woman, all men of the same kind of ethnic background, same age group, and that's really what's wrong with property in general. I think, especially as women, especially as a female business owner, I find it extremely important to set precedent to, say, people in my family that are younger women that want to go and do what they want to do, and whether it's a male dominated sector or not. I've got a friend of mine was talking about contractors, who's a contractor on a site, and she's the only female builder. I think it's becoming a bigger and better thing, and I think it's our jobs really to show that you can do it anyway. What do you both find for yourselves would be the most important thing to say to women that want to go into property?
That's a really good question. I think there's a lot to it. So kind of, if I was going to give some advice, I'd find a really good local agent and go and cut your teeth there. Go and learn what you need to learn.
Experience,
whilst you also have that safety net of having that kind of salary coming in monthly, because there's a lot to know about it. I think sometimes women can be quite well equipped because we've got some of the potentially like soft skills that we were talking about, like being nice. Potentially some of those soft skills that come in the kind of like we're for good or for ill. People always say that women are much more empathetic, or a bit more empathetic. They can kind of pick up on the kind of more emotional intelligence side of things rather than the kind of facts and figures. Not to say that we can't do the facts and figures, because we absolutely can. But sometimes it can be a really nice, safe place. If you find a nice agent that's local, that will also sort of grant you a salary whilst you do get that experience. And the second thing is like take your own personal safety incredibly seriously. Like there's only one of you. Somebody else can come in and do some viewings, and like there has to be systems in place for you to feel physically comfortable going and doing your appointments, because essentially you are client facing, you're public facing, and you don't realistically know who you're going to meet from day to day. So you have to make sure you have those fail safes in place to make sure that you are as safe as you possibly can be.
Definitely.
I mean, we've had some horror stories in the past of stuff that's happened, and people don't hear about estate agency and instantly think, oh, that's a dangerous career choice. And it's not. Typically it's not. But as with anything, there's always risks involved, and it is more for the females in the industry. Obviously, meeting clients, meeting strangers on a day-to-day basis. You could have, say, 10 viewings a day with complete like strangers that you've never met before, don't know anything about them other than the brief 5-10 minute conversation that you've had with them on the phone. You're then going to meet them one-on-one in a house that's not yours, that you are familiar with, but like it's not your property. You don't have any rights over it. In terms of being able to sort of kick someone out or what have you, and it's in areas that aren't always the safest areas. Like you cover kind of high crime areas. Sometimes you can't kind of predict where you're going to take properties on, and even just the travel to and from the properties, like commuting, if you're having to do a long walk to an appointment or something like that, and it's an evening appointment, things like that are just things to bear in mind. Like we've had I had an instance a year or so ago where I got locked in a house it was actually by a woman, but yeah, I went into the house to do evaluation, and she locked the door, kind of triple locked the door behind me, and took away the key, and every other door in the house was locked. And she was quite a scary person. It was a very strange appointment. I did not feel safe. I remember ringing you guys and being like, just so you know, I'm here, and I can't get out, and I was there for over an hour, and it was a very odd appointment. But that was an instance where I just did not feel safe. But I had a kind of procedure in place in that I could ring you. And I know Katherine was like, I'm on my way, I'm coming. I didn't need any kind of intervention in the end, but it was a bit touch and go. But if I was coming into this job on my own and that situation had arose, I would have been really stuck if I didn't have a team around me that I could rely on. So if you are looking to go into this industry on your own and start from kind of fresh, then that is really something to bear in mind, just about when you do appointments, what your procedure is in terms of if something were to go wrong on an appointment, who you'd call, if you have any form of like emergency helpline or something that you can utilise. But I don't.
I think that's really important. I think it's something which we've all had, unfortunately, incidents. I know male estate agents have had the same thing. We've all had instances where we haven't felt safe, or what have you. I think we always have those systems in place. I think as a female business owner of EO, for me, that's something I always keep in mind when everyone has things in their diaries. We always know where each other are, and I think that's really important. I think there's certainly some big positives as well. As much as we touched on some of the maybe negatives or maybe not plus points of being women in business, I think I would find as a positive that it's actually, as a female, you don't often get female business owners, and I think other people find that quite reassuring.
It's a USP in itself
as well.
Yeah, it's a USP in itself in that you are already from day dot, the first time you meet someone and you're pitching your business, you are providing something different to your competition by saying, I have a different approach because I'm a woman running this company.
Yeah.
So you're not going to get the same kind of spiel that you would necessarily from the men of this role.
Yeah.
And the same kind of attitude and swagger and what have you. We're going to come in, as you said, Katherine, with a much softer approach, but still do the job as well, if not better, in most instances. We'll work harder, we care more, we're more invested. And yeah, I think the whole service just feels a little bit more kind of intimate because there is that level of, it's almost like a mothering, it feels kind of maternal, which sounds really dramatic, but in the sense that you just really care about.
I always go, my business is my baby. I've worked on it every single day consistently for 3 years. And I think if I was to lose it, I'd be beside myself if something happens to the business, what have you.
And I think more of a fear of failure with a woman. If you fail, it's almost deeply kind of
demoralising, I think,
personal, because you're like, right, is this the end now? I've given it a go. Is it just not going to work?
Deeply traumatic.
Whereas with a man, I think you could. I mean, I don't know. I can't speak from their point of view, but I feel like it would be easier just to be like, okay, that didn't work out, let's try again, and be able to move, transition quite seamlessly.
Yeah.
Whereas I think that would really negatively affect your mindset as a woman if you, for whatever reason, weren't able to make it work for you in that.
Definitely.
I think one of the things that you just touched on was really interesting for me, that you said that you felt quite maternal, and I do find this job really, really nurturing, because I have 100% confidence in the place where you live being incredibly important to every aspect of your life. Like, it's your home, it's your sanctuary, it's where you come home to at the end of the day, it's where you leave from in the morning. And whether you own it outright or it's a rented property, it's still your home. And the sort of care and attention that I put into my clients, kind of understanding that the aspects of their home that they really like and what they would like to pass on to any incoming buyer or any renter. So it's really, really important to me for them to see kind of holistically. I know that sounds a bit la-di-da or whatever, but it's more than just four walls. It is your home, it's your sanctuary, it's where you go to feel safe and to feel comforted.
Definitely. I think it's an interesting one as well. I think people forget that, we were saying earlier actually, that we're people, and I think that's really important to remember, is we're not necessarily, we're selling your biggest asset, and to some people it's a landlord's portfolio or what have you, but realistically properties is one of the most stressful things. Apparently it's actually more stressful than getting divorced. I don't know, I'm not married, I haven't been divorced yet. But it's, from that perspective, because it is so emotional. Even if I was to sell the flat I'm in now, I'd probably feel quite emotional towards it, because it's my first home and I've had a lot of memories there. So I think that's a kind of, that's the way you have to look at it. And actually, I had the same with a client. He said to me, I thought the whole thing was so stressful, saying to me, just stay calm. And they said to me, our first baby was born here. We've got so many memories. And they were really attached to the flat. They were moving to their next amazing dream home. But I think it's really important to remember. And I think as women, I think you maybe understand that slightly more, and you understand that it's not just a transaction. There is some amazing male agents anyway, though. But
you can empathise with actual, like you just said about them having a baby in that house and what have you. Even if it's just for the short period of time that you're working with them, you're part of their life, and in that 6, 8, 12, however many weeks, you're quite a big part of their life. They contact you more or less every day, and you're around their house, you're in their space however many times to do viewings, so you feature quite heavily in that time, and so I don't think that should be taken for granted.
Your agent choice, so that's the thing, that's what I say to clients. Your agent choice, I will speak to my clients every day, I've actually gone for periods where I've spoken to clients more than the partner and more than family members, where you literally have them calling you 8 p.m. at night. And we're happy to do it because it's our business, right? And that's our main USP, and we want to make sure that they're getting the full level of service that they should be getting, maybe even too much service sometimes. Yeah. And I think that's really important. Your choice of agent is actually someone that you're going to trust coming in and out of your home. You hear horror stories. I went to a women in business event up in town a few weeks ago with a good friend of mine, and I spoke to a lady who said to me, "Oh, I've been on the market with X agent," and she had money go missing, things like that. And it doesn't often happen, but it's, you have to trust in that person. I think that's extremely important. And I think that's something as a business owner, you can give a bit more trust, because it's our money going into it, our time. And if it goes wrong for us, it's not just a review. That's a long and short of it.
Become genuinely invested in it, and I genuinely want the best outcome for both my seller and my landlord and my tenant and my purchaser. I genuinely want what I think is going to be the best for all of those people.
Just to touch on what you just said, Elle, about potentially giving over service, which I think is another challenge that women definitely face, is so in order to, I know it's something that I've really struggled with from when I went from being employed to self-employed, was just I felt the need every day to be kind of really pushing myself so much to the point of burnout, which we've all experienced, where you're just exhausted because you're literally working every hour of the day, and you're really pushing yourself to get new business and make sure you contact all your clients and what have you, and you're really kind of pushing yourself, and all it is to do is to keep up with the big boys, really. And actually I feel like I feel like men don't have that same kind of competitive drive, or that same need to kind of basically overwork. And we are a very service-based company. That's what we really prioritise on. But I definitely feel like women generally, and in the companies that I've worked in previously, women outperform the men. And I can only speak from my experience with this, but in the companies that I worked for previously, especially when it comes to sales and the dedication to the company and the time, it was always women were first. The women were first into the office. My last company was, our start time was 8 until 7, and we were there at 7:30, always half an hour early. Yeah. We always the last to leave. Same with the company before that. It was always the women were the top sellers, the ones doing all the viewings, the ones who were constantly on the phone, not taking the piss with lunch breaks or going home in between appointments or whatever. Like the dedication, I think, difference there. And that's only from my experience in the places that I've worked, but I feel like there is a running theme. I don't know if you guys feel the same, but
I think there has been. I think there's some. I know some amazing male agents that are doing very well and that are top billers where they are, and they're brilliant guys. And I've got a lot of friends that are self-employed male business owners who are brilliant. So I wouldn't want them to think I'm going against that. But look, I think this is not
a slag off men.
It's not a slag off men fest.
It's just speaking from our experiences and our kind of viewpoint.
But I think it's I think the long and short of it is, I think as a woman in general in property, it's harder because you are the minority in general. So I think you have to try a lot harder to be stand out, and you have to also be very careful to not seem too pushy or too aggressive. I know that when I worked on high street, I was a top biller for a long time, and I was definitely seen as that, probably too aggressive, too working hard, not going out enough. And I think that's why, if it was a male, would they be treated the same way? Probably not.
Well, I think I've got coming to that point, like as a mother as well, like I've had to have time off I've got 2 children. I've had to have time off, and now a part of the thing that I really like about this job is the flexibility that it grants me. That I can be there every day to pick my children up if I need to, or I can bring them to school every day or whatever it is. Also, I role model my expectations to them. So I kind of go out and I put my deal heels on, and I'm doing my hair, and I'm going out and I'm doing the appointments, and I'm meeting people, and I'm showing them like this is how you can be a person in the world now, and it, irrespective of whether you're a man or a woman. But I think what you were saying about kind of, I think you kind of potentially got a bit pigeonholed for being too sort of ballsy in a way, to be like, oh, you're a woman, but you're kind of behaving like this. This is very unusual. Whereas I found almost the reverse. When I had children, people very much expected me to become very soft and very kind of I've always been quite a nurturing character. Like that's my characteristics. But I've always been like that. But I think when I came back from having children, people expected me to be softer and to be a bit more kind of like, change. Oh yeah, well it doesn't really matter to you anyway because you've got kids. It's like no, it actually matters much more to them because I've got to model to them what is possible. You know, they're very little still, and I've got to show them what they can achieve.
They'll be absorbing that already. Yeah,
it's interesting you say that because I went to a party a few weeks ago, which was mainly a lot of people that are quite a bit older than me, and I spoke to a lady who's probably kind of early 50s, who said to me, I always think I wish I was a girl in your era because when we was younger, you'd go get a job. You wouldn't even get a job really. That's when we just started getting jobs. She actually works in TV now, so does her husband. And she said to me, I just feel like we should have worked harder in our generation to give you more. But then I said to her, well, look at what we have. I'm a female business owner in my late 20s that I know that anything I want to do and put my mind to I can do it. I think that's exactly right, Katherine, what you're saying with younger little ones. That's extremely important to be the role models, to say, look, anything you want to do, female or male, you can do it, whatever you want to do. And that's across the board.
I remember having a conversation with my grandma, who my family have a background in property anyway, and my grandpa set up a property portfolio years ago, which is still established and running today. But my grandma said, when he passed away, was just when I went into this industry, because it was how he started as an estate agent. She was really proud and really happy, and she was just like, she was a bit shocked. She was like, out of everyone, I'm one of 7 grandchildren. She was like, out of all the grandchildren, it was you that went into property and what have you, and grandpa would be really, really proud of you or whatever. But I was like, shouldn't be a surprise. Property's not just for men. It's everyone can do it. Everyone can be a part of it. And it's not, I haven't had to kind of do anything special to get kind of through the door. I've just worked hard and just followed the natural progression. But it was just, it always surprises me when we speak about it. She's quite old fashioned in that mentality anyway. But I'm just like, it shouldn't be a surprise. This is just the norm, that women go out and work and own a business and run a business and whatever. But I quite like being that point of difference now.
It's funny. It makes a difference. My family always say to me, obviously I'm not on the scale, they always go, oh, you're the Alan Sugar or whatever, and that's exactly really what we shouldn't be saying to women in business, because it's saying, well, actually
you're the Karen Brady.
No, exactly. I'm actually the Elle of the business world. But I think it's a really interesting one. But I love it. I actually think being a minority in a business is actually beneficial to us. I think it's the way I actually would prefer to be the person that works hard. And actually on the flip side, I do actually think in some ways it must be quite hard to be the majority now, because actually the minorities are probably not in our industry, but in certain ways in the woke world that we live in now, I suppose, which is, I think, for the better in some aspects, not all, and that's a whole nother topic. But I think it's hard across the board, but I think it's what you make of it, and that's the main thing.
I think one thing, I was speaking to my sister-in-law about it the other day, and I think we've touched on it before, is what I don't think it's so present now as it was maybe a few years ago when we first started. But there was a few kind of bigger, more corporate agents or high street agents or what have you that had standards set out purely for women, especially in terms of appearance, which was part of the job description. If you applied for a job, you were expected to look a certain way, dress a certain way, and I think there are still maybe a few cases of it. You don't hear it as much, but there was
shockingly regressive, isn't it?
There were really covenants aggressive as part of the job, where it was like, you have to wear heels, you have to wear makeup, you have to wear a skirt, you have to have your nails done, you have to present a certain way in this kind of, not kind of I don't know, too much, not flaunting too much, but a kind of sexy saleswoman.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, is not the way. People don't really care what you look like. You have to look presentable, and you have to be smart, and you have to present yourself well on appointments and valuations. Of course you do, because it's a business and you're pitching a service and you want to be taken seriously. Yeah. You do not need to wear lots of makeup or wear short skirts to get business. We don't do that. We don't operate in that way. Elle and I most of the time wear suits, and you wear trousers and nice tops and what have you. We don't go for the whole short skirt, high heel dress thing, because it's not... Yeah. that's not the service. The service is you.
Yeah.
It's not what you look like.
It's what you know.
Yeah, and there are still agents that it might not be as part of their job description, but they feel that it's still very much along the lines of sex sales. Yeah, and they think that to be a saleswoman, you have to dress provocatively, which is just not how we operate. And I'm so glad that it's moving slowly past that. Because even if you see it on social media, you see some of the outfits that girls wear on these appointments. And I just think to myself, like, do you actually want to be wearing that outfit to do that? Or are you being encouraged to do that by maybe a male senior person in that company? Or do you just feel like that's the only way you're going to sell that property? Are you not confident enough in your own sales ability to be able to do it without wearing a revealing dress? Like, these are questions that I feel like need
addressing. I remember when I first started in High Street, and I won't name any companies, but it was exactly the same actually. And years later, a couple of years later, they actually got sued for discrimination because we had to wear heels, we had to have our nails done, we had to wear makeup. I went into the office once and basically got told off for not wearing makeup because we all had like for the makeup's in the office and that kind of thing. And it's just it's absolute madness. I can understand that from a perspective as a business owner, I wouldn't turn up to a valuation in a tracksuit or with like blue jeans on or what have you. I want to make sure I'm presentable so a client knows that we're serious. But it is outrageous actually the way that
that also goes back to the safety point though, because if you are dressing like that on a viewing, and again, this is not it's not saying that this should be how society is anymore, and I'm not going along the lines of if you dress like that then you're asking for it, but that kind of is the attention you're going to attract is not going to be necessarily positive attention if you're walking down the street in a certain area in high heels and a short dress with everything out on your way to a viewing. Like, your safety, you're putting yourself at risk as a woman, in like a man man wouldn't get that. So I think it's definitely something that needs to be in the sales industry as a whole. It's not just restricted to property, it's car salesmen, whatever. But it's just an issue that I think, especially more towards now as property, the estate agency and what have you is moving more to a social media platform, Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and things, where it's all about image, it's all about what looks good on social media, what's going to get the most following is such a massive thing, what's going to get the most likes. People think that if you dress in a sexy way, that's going to boost your views, and then suddenly all those people are going to follow you and then want to buy everything that you're selling. Those people aren't going to buy that property, they're following because you're dressing like that. It's not also about a case of service.
I think it's really important with the social media world we live in. We do a lot of reels, right? And Katherine, you're smashing it, a bit of location, Kirsty, heart out. It's like with the reels that you're doing, it's great for us to introduce it and etc. But it's not about us. It's about the property. As much as we want the following, we obviously building a business, and that's the way it goes. That's being completely honest. That's the what we want from it. But we want to sell our clients' property. It's about our clients. You can see that from our reviews. I think that's also lost in translation across these social media platforms where
if the people are watching you instead of the house, you're not doing your job right.
Exactly. It's the same thing. Like, if the client's calling you for feedback or an update, then you're doing your job wrong. Because they shouldn't be calling you and chasing you. You should be updating them so much that they don't have to call you. I think it's an interesting one. I think with social media, definitely, I think especially with Love Islands and young women watching things, I think it's important to be the women that, as Katherine said earlier, that people look up to and go, actually, I want to be like that. I can do that.
That's so hard though to separate, because that's such a culture now of that. The image is everything for young girls now. If teenage girls that are still in school and are so heavily influenced by what's going on TikTok and things like Love Island, and that, it's so hard to show them that actually when they hit a certain age point, not all of them are going to be successful YouTubers or TikTokers, and they're not going to make necessarily a living from that. Some might, but actually society still goes on, and they need to look at their career options that are actually going to make them good money and are going to be sustainable, and they're going to build a good foundation for their life off screen. Because I mean, it's likely that Instagram and TikTok and what have you are going to be in it here for the long haul, but eventually they might not be as popular as they are now. You're still going to need estate agents, you're still going to need people like us who are help keep society running. I
think the thing to remember with Instagram and things like that, and we were saying it earlier actually, if people only see what they want to see, and they see the rewards of maybe us having a business and doing what we do and thinking, it looks so great, getting coffee from here, or doing viewings, seeing these big houses, selling sunset. What they don't see is all the difficult, hard conversations, the anxiety of not being able to sleep because you're so stressed from work, or the tears of being stressed, or what have you, the time that we spend doing things. But also, I'm very much glad that when I was kind of 16 to 21, that wasn't, well, maybe 20 was like whenever TikTok started coming in, but luckily nothing was recorded when we were young, so it's a lot easier.
I'm really grateful as well. I think that we've had a hard time. But what you say about the Selling Sunset thing, when we went to a launch event at Battersea Power Station just to go and view the
that
flats.
was Selling Sunset a little bit,
but we went and we had a photo, whatever, up on the roof. It was a really nice sunset. All the comments I got was like, oh my God, it's like Selling Sunset, it's like Selling Sunset. And I was like, that just goes to show. And I was like, you think that our job is that glamified version, and I was just like, it's so different. And I was like, but your only idea, like possible idea of what our job could be like, is from that show, which is just not a reality of what it's like in the UK. It might be in America, I don't know. But I was just like, that just sums it up really, is that we're actually doing something that was quite impressive. We went to a really good launch. We've had a few viewings and intros and what have you at that development, and we've had some successes there and what have you. But from that, all that people took was, oh my God, Selling Sunset. I was just like, please.
Difficult. To round off, what would you both say to young girls going into property?
Keep going. Don't give up, because it's really easy to give up. And there's a lot about it that's really, really difficult, because as we've been discussing, it's a male-dominated industry with potentially certain additional standards for women that kind of don't exist for men. But it's a lot of fun. And you get to be like properly embedded with people's massive life decisions. And that's not a responsibility I take lightly. It's something that is very, very apparent to me every time I have a conversation with a vendor or with a landlord, and I'm saying, I understand that this is your property. This is, whether you live there or you don't, it's still your property. It's something that you've nurtured, and it's something that you've cared for this number of years. And I want to make sure that I can do the best for you, to set you up basically for your future. And to be part of someone's journey like that, just keep going.
Makes a big difference, definitely.
I would probably say to have full confidence in your ability, and do not compare yourself to other people. Because that was my biggest downfall, is that I would look at what everyone else was doing on social media, men, women, whoever, and I would doubt myself. If I saw that they took on 3 properties that week and I'd only taken on 1 property that week, or only sold 1 property that week, I would be like, oh God, it's me, I'm doing it wrong, I'm not good enough. And actually it wasn't. It was just different, completely different area, different person, different market, lots of different variants. And I would just put myself down all the time, to the point where I just had to take myself off like social media and those platforms and just be like, give myself a break. And then the next week it was me who was having those successes, and I was like, oh, it's fine, it's just swings and roundabouts, that's how this job goes. So just have full confidence, don't compare yourself, work hard, and the rewards, I think, for women in this job, once you get it right, are so much greater.
Definitely.
In the long run.
Definitely,
yeah.
Great. Well, thanks, guys. We'll wrap it up there.
Girl power.
If you enjoyed our podcast, you want to learn a little bit more about us and our kind of social media platforms, you'll see them at the end of this podcast. We're open to this monthly, so stay tuned and keep in touch. And if you do have any questions, then feel free to call us on the number at the end of this podcast. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for watching.